Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah Gannessa, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Welcome back, Four Visions family. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Four Visions podcast. I am so excited to welcome Usha Anandi to the show today. It's a tremendous honor and privilege to get to sit down with her and share what I know is going to be a very beautiful, potent conversation. Usha's work is dedicated to revolutionizing the way modern healthcare serves the sacred and the ancient within each woman. She is the founder of Womben Wellness and is a devoted mother, holistic nutritionist, childbirth educator, full spectrum doula, and herbalist, committed to changing the status quo by alchemizing modern scientific information with ancient energetic practices to serve the whole woman. Usha has trained thousands of women around the world and is known for sharing life-changing teachings in a clear, accessible, and compassionate way. Welcome, Usha. It's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm so excited to get to learn a little bit more about you and your story. So with that, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourselves to our listeners. And I would love to maybe start with a question of where your why comes from for the vision that you're holding for all of women and all of humanity through the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Mariah, for having me. And what a beautiful, potent first question to start with. I always say that I never started the path of womb work consciously. I never wanted to follow this path. I wanted to do something normal. I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor, something that my parents would be proud of. But again and again and again, my womb brought me to my knees. And I first started this path for myself so that I could heal painful periods, irregular cycles, chronic reoccurring infections. But eventually I realized, once I healed myself, that this work is not for me. It is for my daughter. It is for my mother. It is for my grandmother. And it is for the earth. For me, I see the reflection of what is happening to the earth and the deforestation and the oceans full of plastic inside of women's bodies. What we do to ourselves, we do to nature. And so if we are to heal the earth, we first have to start with the womb, which is the representation of the cycles, the representation of the primordial creative force that weaves within all things. So my prayer is that to heal the macrocosm through the microcosm, to heal the earth through healing the earth of our own bodies. And it starts in the womb.
Thank you so much for that. And what a beautiful vision to be holding and stewarding. Have a tremendous amount of respect and reverence for the work that you and your team are doing and how accessible the teachings that you're sharing with the world are and how vital they are at this time in humanity's evolution. And I want to mention here at the beginning of this conversation that my intention for this conversation is that all of our listeners, regardless of whether they're male or female, or whatever their sex or gender orientation is, can find resonance in these teachings. Because through my own personal womb healing journey, I have really resonated with a lot of what you just shared about how the womb is a blueprint and a map that we can utilize to come back into right relationship with the cycles of the earth, with the wisdom that the earth carries and has and holds for us. And so, my hope is that through this conversation, we can touch on some beautiful and potent topics that can be resonant for all beings. And it's a beautiful invitation to the Four Visions community to open up to the power of the womb and to invite this consciousness of womb wisdom into our lives and to orient us and bring us more information to what it means to walk in right relationship with the plants, which is why most of us are here. Most of us feel called to this particular platform, and to recognize that they're one and the same, that we can't have one of these paths without this holistic understanding of equality and equanimity between the earth and us as children of the earth. And so with that, I would love to hear your own experience of how your path with your womb and your healing journey has informed your life and brought you to the place that you are in now, in this place of service.
As you were talking, Mariah, I just want to name that I had this vision, this very strong vision, which I actually had in ceremony a few weeks ago, of all the plants that you steward and share through Four Visions, as well as the energy of the womb, just like coming forward and embracing everyone who's listening, and that really being the extension of the Great Mother. And this feeling of the Great Mother calling us all home, calling us all back to this feminine hearth to heal and to reclaim. And it's not just for those of us who have uteruses,
Mhm,
it's for all of us to do this healing that we as individuals and as a collective so desperately need.
mhm,
And for myself, the way that I found this path was through hardship and challenge, because there's no way I would have listened if life didn't bring me to my knees. And one of my teachers says, when life brings you to your knees, that's the perfect place to get down and pray. And so I was born into a lineage where there was a lot of grief and loss. I was born into a lineage that was extremely religious, Irish Catholic. And so I grew up in a home where misogyny and patriarchy and disconnection from the earth were really just the status quo. And yet there was this wild call inside of me that knew since I was young that there was a different way. That, the way we were living was not the way that it was meant to be. And this misalignment with the inner and the outer started to show in my body through painful periods and irregular cycles. And the first kind of line of help that I got was from Western allopathic medicine, and that was to go on the pill. Oh, you don't like your cycle? Well, it's okay. Here's this pill. You don't have to deal with it anymore. And so many of us women and people with wombs are told that this pill will be, the savior. Not only can we be sexually liberated, but we can also stop dealing with the nuisance of our blood and the nuisance of the different hormonal fluctuations. And so I went on that pill for almost 5 years. And it wasn't until it started wreaking havoc on my system and bringing out breakouts and mood swings and weight gain and weight loss, just lots of different chaotic fluctuations in my body. And I started looking for answers, and no one had the answers for me. It was always try a different pack of pills, try a different brand. Oh, you're crazy. It's not happening, right? Kind of this experience of knowing something so strongly internally, but no one validating what I knew and felt from the outside, that I started to have an awakening where I realized that enough was enough. I was tired of listening to a system that didn't have my best interests at heart. And so, through my desire to heal myself, studying holistic nutrition, clinical herbalism, and moving to Costa Rica for 4 years and really being in the jungle there and apprenticing with nature and apprenticing with my teachers, I started to awaken and really more so remember a way. And there's a lot out there right now about womb awakening. And I always say, we don't need to awaken anything. The womb is there, the womb is communicating. And the womb is non-gendered. I'm not talking about the uterus. I'm talking about your pelvic space that every single person has, regardless of sex, regardless of gender. And in that pelvic space, that low belly space, and if you're listening, you can even take a deep breath in there. That is the portal to primordial energy, the life force that gives birth to all things. And oh my God, it lives within you. And it is terrifying to admit that that power courses through our veins, but it does. And meeting that power in my life through birthing my daughter at home, through going through a harrowing postpartum, for me, these physiologic initiations of my period blood, my monthly cycle, giving birth, becoming a mother, all of these physiologic initiations were portals into deeper communion with the goddess, deeper communion with the great mother, and that primordial energy.
Taking a short break from today's episode to share about an incredible product line that we absolutely love. It's called CLAREIA, which means clarity and illumination. CLAREIA was created from divine inspiration and guidance that our coherence of body, mind, and soul are born from inner clarity. These creations are alchemized with the intention to bring forth health and well-being to the totality of your temple to nourish a vital, thriving life. Holistically handcrafted with love and care for your well-being of mind, body, and soul. An offering that is life-giving, relevant, and aligned for all life and the future generations to come. CLAREIA is formulated from over 33 years of the founders' combined in-depth, dedicated study, research, application, and experience with holistic health, Ayurveda, herbalism, permaculture, detoxification methodology, and healing. Everything is 100% organic or wild-crafted, biodynamic, homegrown, vegan, botanical, pure, all ingredients of the purest, highest grade, sourced ethically and sustainably. CLAREIA is a full-circle sustainable project that aims to create as big as an impact for our Mother Earth and all life as possible. We are 100% aligned on every level with this beautiful company's mission, and for that reason, we felt called to share this incredible product line with you, our Four Visions family. 10% of all proceeds go directly to nonprofit organizations aimed at environmental regeneration and restorative efforts, specifically for water cleanup, protection and preservation of the waters, restoration of bee populations, protection of indigenous sacred lands, rights, and natural resources, reforestation, and endangered species and animal rights. Check out the link in the show notes and make sure to use the code FVFamily to snag some savings on your order. And now back to today's episode. So beautiful and so well articulated. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really have such a profound reverence for anyone who devotes their lives to tuning into the power of the womb and the power of our own cosmic divinity. And that's one of the things I love about the path of womanhood and the path of womb work is it really allows us to find this place of empowerment. For me, my journey has been, with the plants, and I found my teacher over a decade ago, but my teacher is a man. And so a lot of my studies with the plants and with the botanical practices and healing traditions of his people have nourished me in ways that I could have never imagined, but there was always one element that I knew I had to take ownership of, and it was the study of womanhood. And so that's what they call it, the study of womanhood that doesn't have a start or a stop for a woman in the lineage and the culture, but rather accompanies them throughout the journey and the many initiations like you were talking about that we go through throughout the path of our lives. And so a lot of my own inner work had to take place in this space of communing with my menstruation, communing with the ceremony that came every month. And it's really quite beautiful in the culture of Yahe that, in my studies of many different indigenous ayahuasca cultures, the Yahe has something very unique in regards to the study of the moon because it has very strict traditions regarding working with yahe and plant medicines when you're bleeding. And at first, when I heard and learned about this, I was very turned off because I, felt like it was just a reiteration of the patriarchy. And it really brought up a tremendous amount of doubt for me and my path. But over the many years of really working through the many layers that come with acceptance and recognition that maybe even if we're being told to do something, it can even still be born within us to do it. And I battled with that for many years because I think it's natural, being told to go off to a woman's maloka and go do your women things because it's that time of the month. Those inner wounds of rejection, of isolation come up. And that's one of the things that really kept me going back to the Yahe, even though, I really hated doing it and it filled me with a tremendous amount of rage, actually. But that rage wasn't coming from the Yahe and it wasn't coming from the lineage. It was coming from my womb and it was coming from myself as well as the collective feminine. And so this is what catalyzed me in my own journey of the study of the womb and the study of the ceremony of menstruation. And just want to share that a little bit because I really did feel a call to bring Usha onto the platform because I do want our community to create this space to honor the moon and to understand it and to be open to hearing about it and really diving into it because it's something that we can't avoid on the path of spiritual study. It's of vital importance for anyone, regardless of whether they have a womb or not, to understand it or to have reverence and respect for the potency of the process. And so I'm curious, with what I just shared, if you have anything that, resonates and anything that you'd like to kind of continue off of on that thread of what happens when we really start tuning in and listening and how we discern what's ours and what's not and how we can utilize the environment that catalyzes us forth in it because it could be so many things, right? It could be infertility or it could be health issues or it could be being with someone who doesn't respect the menstruation or doesn't understand it, and we don't feel supported in our home life with it. So there's many different initiating factors that might catapult us on a path of study and self-empowerment through the study of our wombs. And I'd love to hear, what is coming through for you on that topic.
There's so much you said there. I can see how we can branch off. And, what's coming up for me first is actually a story from when I met Taito Juanito, your teacher. And I got to sit with him in Costa Rica for a few nights with Yahe. And actually on the second night of the medicine, and I had arrived there with deep prayers because my mother at the time had cancer. And so I arrived with her picture to put on the altar, deep prayers for my feminine lineage. And on the second night, I got my period.
Mhm.
And, there were no female malokas there because we were in someone's house. And so I was really distraught. I was like, okay, I can't drink, I guess, because, being on my period, I'm more connected than the Taita himself.
Mhm.
And so he sat with me and he told me, like, I feel that, your period is coming to try to stop your healing
Mhm.
because there's some fear there. So I'm going to let you drink, but you're going to be annexed to this corner of the house. I'm not going to look at you. I'm not going to see you. And so I was there with my best friend, and before the ceremony, she was pouring, sweet baths over my head of these special herbs. And as I was in the shower with her and she's pouring these sweet baths over my head and brushing my hair and braiding my hair, I got so emotional because it dawned on me of, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be honored every single month.
Mhm.
This is how I'm supposed to be treated. Not like I'm disgusting, but like I am the goddess herself.
Mm.
And I remember in ceremony, being in the corner and I drank and I had such a powerful, powerful experience. And I remember one moment, Taika and we locked eyes. And there was this absolute knowing of the power within me as my blood was, flowing through my womb, and the absolute power within all women and all bleeding people that we hold. And that ceremony for me was such a turning point because I got to see the stark contrast between what we are taught as women and what people are taught about women, and what is the actual reality. And what a hilariously painful lie that we are told that we are dirty, disgusting, weak, lesser than, when in reality, we hold the force of creation between our thighs. And that is the biggest, lie, illusion, spell that I am here to break. And it's something that we are all under, regardless of our anatomy, regardless of our gender. And so, one of the ways, I think that we can dive into this conversation is by looking at the menstrual cycle. And, Mariah, you've talked a lot about the moon. And I love teaching womb work from a very practical physiologic standpoint. And my work, I say it's alchemizing science and the sacred, because when I was trying to heal, there were two very distinct paths. One, which was the Western allopathic medical system, which totally dismissed me and treated me like a number. And, if I had any emotions, they would write a prescription or a referral to a psychiatrist. There's no space for my humanness, at least I felt. Or the other, this totally ungrounded new age kind of, journey too, that I didn't really connect with. And so if we talk about the sun and the moon energy and how that manifests in our body, we know that men and people without uteruses, they are ruled by solar energy. And that physiologically looks like your circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. And as women and people with wombs, we have solar energy, but we also have lunar energy. And that's what rules our hormonal cycles. And that's called the infradian rhythm, or your menstrual cycle. And it's a 28, 29-ish, just like one complete lunar cycle, day cycle, where we go through 4 distinct seasons. So you get to meet 4 distinct faces of the feminine, 4 distinct expressions of yourself every month. And so when we talk about honoring the moon and bringing the moon energy in and serving the goddess, serving the great mother, for me, it really starts there as an internal process of honoring the different expressions of ourselves and learning how to live in a cyclical way, which is not distinct to the feminine, which is distinct to nature. And we are nature. And right now, I see so many trends of trying to hack our way out of nature, when in reality, all traditional healing cultures say the way back to health, the way back to balance is by recognizing we are nature, not that we are above it. And so for me, it starts with looking at the menstrual cycle. I think that's a beautiful way, an area we could go into. But I'm going to pass to you to see where you want to go, Mariah. Where should we go?
Thank you so much for bringing in the solar and the lunar energies, because I think that that's a really tangible way for us to start to understand how these energies are present in all beings, as well as something that we can't turn a blind eye to, that we really have to get to know them and welcome them into our lives, to our lifestyles. And again, really, really beautiful explanation. And I think also is that what we've kind of been mentioning is this the way that our society, values so strongly the solar path and puts so much pressure on both, all genders to really live in that solar capacity all the time. And so, what happens when we are constantly going and that we're not taking that time to slow down or to honor our body's natural rhythms, or even just the different phases of our cycles, or just the seasons, right? And when we don't do that, we experience burnout, we experience lack of inspiration, we experience lack of connection, feeling lost. And so really, and you this articulation of just reminding us that we are nature is so beautiful, because it's really the way home, right? It's the path that we have to take to come back to ourselves and to feel connected again. Oftentimes, if someone tells me that they're going through a period of feeling disconnected, the first thing I ask them is, how are they feeling in connection with nature? How is their relationship with nature and with the rhythms or whatever season we're in, with their bodies, if they're a woman, how their menstrual cycle is. So ultimately, our relationship with nature, when we put it under a magnifying glass, tells us so much about our relationship with ourselves. And when that's out of balance is when we experience the imbalance, in our lives, and this feeling of like always hustling or always trying to chase after something, always feeling like we're behind, right? And trying to push, push, push ourselves. So again, there's a lot of different areas that we could go. And I think for me, I feel most inspired for us. We have this womb expert here. We're so blessed to get to hear your beautiful insights and wisdom. And I really want all people who are tuning into this conversation to get a better sense of what it looks like to welcome in the energy of the womb and the menstruation, and what it means to live from a consciousness that is in relationship to the cycles of nature. And so, maybe you could take a few minutes to just give us a vision of what that could look like, right, in our homes, in our relationships, in our work, and our service, and our actions, as well as a society as a whole, because I think that that's a really beautiful way to bring light to the ways in which we aren't there yet.
Beautiful question. Yeah, so, for me, the womb is the inner representation of the outer. The womb is the microcosm of the macrocosm. And with that, I mean that the womb is the representation of the four seasons, of the cyclical processes of nature, which is the inevitable death and the recreation of that energy and the rebirth. And so, for women and people with wombs, and for those who love them, serving the womb is coming back into connection with nature. So, just like Mother Earth goes through distinct seasons, and where I live, there's four distinct seasons. And just like we experience these seasons outwardly through the rhythm of the earth, if we have a womb, we also experience internal representations of the seasons. But the difference is that our seasons are not spread out over one calendar year. Our seasons are experienced through one lunar month. Notice the infradian rhythm or the menstrual cycle. So we have inner spring, inner summer, inner fall, inner winter. And we know that the heat of summer and the peak energy of the sun beating down and the plants so alive and everything warm on the earth is so different from the midpoint of the darkness and the silence and the grief of winter. And so every month we have these stark contrasts through these 4 seasons that correlate to distinct hormonal, energetic, spiritual changes that are taking place within our bodies. And I'm going to go into those in a moment. But first, I just want us all to pause and consider that the world we live in and the way we've been taught to care for our bodies does not factor these distinct seasonal changes in. We live in a world that is tailored to male physiology, tailored to, as you said, Mariah, the solar cycle, which can lead to burnout for men too. The sun reflects upon the moon. And if you're looking at the ocean, you'll see the reflection of the sun on the surface. But what is controlling the deeper waters? The moon and her changes. And in Vedic scriptures, the moon represents the unconscious mind. And so I see us all focused on solar energy, focused on the surface level, go, 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 more and more and more. Meanwhile, we're stuffing more emotions, more experiences, more feelings down, down, down into the currents as we ignore the lunar energy. So learning how to live with the seasons, learning how to bow to the hormonal, physical, and energetic changes that take place in the body is a way to reconnect with nature, is a way to honor the goddess, whether you're doing that in yourself because you have a womb, or whether you're supporting a partner, a lover, a sister, a mother who does. Bowing to the womb, bowing to the energy of the seasons inside of us is a way back to connection with nature. So, looking at the seasons, most people start with inner winter, but I teach it starting with inner spring because inner winter, which is the representation of the menstrual cycle, which is the release of blood, the release of the endometrium lining in the uterus, that is a death. But a death is also the beginning. And because I teach women how to realign with their cycles and heal period issues, I always start with spring because it's a very poignant energy that you can feel. So that's where I'll start today. So the follicular phase, which I call inner spring, is a time that begins when the blood of your cycle stops. So once you or your loved one has stopped bleeding, that's when inner spring begins. And I love going to Canada for spring. One of my best friends lives in Canada. And after months and months of snow, where all the plants have been hibernating under the earth, under this huge pack of snow, when you go to Canada in May, you can smell the fertility in the air. All of the flowers are so joyfully pushing up and out of the soil, and you can smell and feel and sense how long these plants have been waiting to express their life force. And our inner spring is no different. That's when estrogen starts to rise. That's when we start to feel interested in creating connections with other people because estrogen makes us very interested in creating and maintaining bonds. So, this is a great time to use the fresh energy of spring to look ahead into the month. What do you want to do? What do you want to create? Who do you want to connect with? What plans do you hope come into fruition? And it's that fertility, that potential of spring. All of this has been waiting. All the seeds we planted, all the things we let die in winter. Now we're getting to see the freshness of what's left and what's coming to be birthed into life. And then we move into the next season, which after spring comes summer. And this is our ovulatory phase. This is our peak energy when estrogen reaches its peak. And physiologically, what's happening in our body at this time is one or two dominant follicles will break away from the follicular head and be sent down into the egg tubes. And so we get this birth. It's a birth in itself, this sending our deepest creation out into the world, sending this thing we've been working on out. And we see that energy manifests as being really, really good at executing things. This is a great time in your cycle to plan meetings, to plan podcasts, to plan big presentations, to really execute what it is you desire to create in the world. And you have peak estrogen energy that's supporting you. And these two phases of the cycle, spring and summer, I always start with them because these are two faces of the feminine that we are most comfortable with. The mothering feminine, the one who cares about others, the devoted feminine, the sexy feminine, the one who wants sex, who wants intimacy. But as we move on to the next two phases, now we see a huge shift. We were ruled by estrogen, which makes us very interested in connecting with the outer world and maintaining bonds. But now, post-ovulation, we move into inner fall, which is known as the luteal phase. This is our premenstrual time. And this is where our hormonal balance changes. Now estrogen falls and progesterone, another sex hormone, starts to rise. And whereas in the first two phases, we're looking outwards, we're tending to our external world, we're maintaining bonds, now our vision shifts inwards and we're focused only on our inner circle. And if you can think about this from a physiologic standpoint, if conception has happened, well, now that, is implanting inside of us, that being is implanting there. We're starting to take care of that life inside of us. And so our whole body's energy is focused on the womb space, no longer outwards, focused on the womb space. And whether or not conception has happened, whether or not, we desire that, our energy still focuses on our inward journey. And this is such a potent point because this is where the veil of estrogen lifts. And we get to see our deepest desires, our deepest yearnings, our deepest needs so clearly for what they are. And this is a time where we are connected to magic, to intuition. This is a time where we are oracles. And yet most of us do not understand it as such because this is the time that is so deeply shamed. Right? This is when we're told we're bitches. This is when we tell ourselves we're crazy. This is when we're told we're too much, we're too difficult, we're too emotional. When in reality, these deep feelings are portals to our power, to our magic. You do not have a powerful woman without honoring the deep and palpable sensitivity that also lives within her own heart. And this is the phase where we get to touch that, where we get to touch that feeling if we're open to it. And we have to create space for that in ourselves. And we need people who will create space for us in that because the world we live in does not. And so it's this feeling of surrounding this premenstrual woman, this woman who's about to bleed, with this cocooning energy of honoring her as what she is, which is the oracle, which is the wise woman. And seeing her for what she is, which is a bridge between the unseen and the seen. And that is just a huge shift that we can make in ourselves in this phase of, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm an oracle. And what arises from that place of honoring and bowing to our power there. And then finally, we move into the last phase, the big release, inner winter, which is the blood of menstruation. And our blood has so much potency and power. On a physical level, your blood and the way it looks, the color, the consistency, the smell, that holds messages of the health of your internal organs in Eastern medicine. It tells you about how you're living, your diet, your lifestyle, what food is able to be processed and metabolized, what isn't, your relationships. All of this is read through your blood like a report card that your body sends to you every month. And this is the time for the death, the grief, and the release. And so we see this contrast, Mariah, of the first two phases when we're fertile, when we're open. This is when, we honor women in these phases. We love them, we celebrate them, we put them on magazines, we put them on posters. And then the last two phases, which is when we really touch our true power as oracles. And this is a time where so many of us feel confused, either how to support ourselves or how to support the women that we love.
It is often said that for those who work with plant medicines, 50% of the spiritual transformation takes place during the ceremony, and the other 50% takes place during the process of integration that follows. Navigating the process of translating the healing you received from the plants into embodied wisdom is not as easy as one might think, and many people often struggle to see this change and transformation take place. Last fall, 4 Visions launched our flagship plant medicine integration program. We poured our combined decades of experience working with plant medicines into creating the curriculum that we wish we had years ago when struggling to navigate the profound realms of translating, applying, and embodying the profound wisdom that the plants and fungi give us. Integration work is the action taking and the grounding into the fibers of our beings, the ancestral and cosmic wisdom that the plants give us. It is the manifestation of every vision. When we do it well, it becomes the true ceremony, the ceremony of life. Since we launched last October, we've had over 30 people go through the program. We have received incredible feedback that we have taken to heart and have since decided to revamp the program based off of the needs and input of past participants and the 4 Visions community at large. Some exciting updates and changes to our integration program include more accessible pricing, payment plans. We redesigned the program to make it much more customizable, to be able to create and design the experience that you are needing and wanting. The ability to work at your own pace with immediate access to all educational content. Added course modules, additional faculty and resources to better support your studies. A more streamlined experience, making it easy to navigate and absorb the material. Discounted pricing for participants on our entire apothecary with guidance to be able to source the plant allies that will be most conducive to your integration journey. We just relaunched the program, and now until the end of April, we're offering 25% off all 3 paths. Discount is automatically applied at checkout. Go to 4visionsintegration.com to learn more and to sign up. Now back to today's episode. Wow, thank you. So beautiful and potent, just really taking us on that journey, and really invite everyone to just sit with that and see, tune into the power of what it means, all of those different phases and the energies that they carry and the medicine that each one of the phases really hold. And I feel like it's a really perfect time to talk about how we can organize our lives around those phases. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit with where we kind of tend to plan and what we should capitalize on that potent ovulatory energy. But this is like something I think that continues to be one of my greatest challenges, especially, as a mother and a business owner. And I'm very excited to hear about your journey with balancing and planning and how you have created space in your life to do that. And I also just want to add one thing to this really beautiful and powerful explanation that you just gifted us. And that is this element of the oracle that you were sharing about. I really love this. I've never heard this word utilized in the luteal and menstrual phases, but it very much is the same as the terminology utilized in the culture of Yahe, where you even were mentioning when we become so powerful that our channel is so open that we have the power to go to the celestial realms and bring the same information that comes through the Taita when he's healing a patient or when he's serving them Yahe. And so learning how to open that space and bring forth that information has been the most powerful and inspirational study for me personally. And I often will bring questions to my moon time, or I'll bring um, or disorganization that I know needs to be organized that hasn't been able to be organized in the first half of the month, and I'll bring it to the altar of those sacred days. And really, for me, it's been about knowing that this is a powerful time of organization, right? And in the culture of Yahe, we actually, in our moon time, there's like a day for each specific theme in our lives. So first we organize our relationship with self on the first day. Then we organize our relationship with the masculine, which could be our partner, or children, or just general relationship with the energies of the masculine. The third day, we organize our relationship to our work and our service and our projects. If there's like energetic blockages or something's not flowing, that's the day that we really devote to investigating where this energy is coming from and bringing the power of the moon to organize and recalibrate everything. Then the fourth day, we organize for our relationship to our ancestors and to our spiritual guides and to the cosmic realms. And so this really kind of brings it full circle to be this powerful alchemical moment of us really playing a role in bringing everything into balance. And so for me, this has been the work that I've done in this study. But of course, every moon comes with more medicine, more information, more wisdom. And that's often why, they say that to really learn about the womb from a teacher, it's best to find an elder who has bled her whole life and is now in her elder years of cronehood, of wisdomhood, because really it does require many, many years of accumulation of the wisdom and information from each month cycle to be able to arrive at that throne of wisdom, where we really celebrate the elder and everything that she has passed through in her life, everything that she has gone through and transmuted and organized. And so but so much of that is done, moon cycle to moon cycle, month to month, right? And there's sometimes cycles for me personally where I know I didn't get the full extent of what was there waiting for me. And I have to wait a whole nother cycle to get to that place again. And that's where I kind of really just laugh a little at myself, where I'm trying to do so much, where the work is right here and I just kind of distracted myself and I took the easy way out. And so it's been this beautiful journey of really learning discipline, because your whole life begins to orient around your body when you really start to tune into the wisdom that your body carries. And so planning changes, commitments change, and really to be able to create that space to receive the messages and the guidance, it does require a certain amount of commitment and discipline and desire to open up that portal. Because if we are just watching shows and like binging TV all moon, then like of course that's going to be restful on some level, but we haven't created any space to receive all of the cosmic information that's just there wanting to come through us. So, can you talk a little bit about what it means to create that space, as well as potentially some of the challenges that come up when we start wanting to attune our lifestyle to our bodies and to the rhythms of our cycle?
Yes. And I got, a vision as you're talking about that. So many of the women that I work with and the people that I work with in general were starved for these ceremonial experiences, right? We seek out ceremony. We want to go on retreat. We're hoping for a vacation. We want that space. And yet we as cyclical beings, as people who bleed, as women, we don't need that because our menstrual cycles are ceremony. Every single month, we get that ceremony. And so, learning how to live in alignment with your cycle means ensuring that you're not missing that potent time, that you're creating enough space so that when it arrives, you're ready.
Mhm.
You're ready to receive that and to have one foot in this reality and another foot in the other, being the channel for that information. And I believe that that is why the world is suffering so much right now, because so many women are not claiming their right as a portal for healing. So much energy wants to come through, but we are blocking ourselves as channels for whatever reason. And each of us has a unique medicine that needs to come through. And so, learning how to live in alignment with your cycle is returning to that power and that remembrance of that. So if we start just how we, talked about it, looking at inner spring and talking about the distinct difference between the two major sex hormones at play during our monthly cycle, we see estrogen and progesterone. And so estrogen rules the first half, inner spring and inner summer, our follicular and our ovulatory phase. And estrogen is a fertility hormone. There's many different kinds of estrogen in your body. But one of the things that estrogen does is it helps with ripening. So it literally helps the development of your sex organs. And it also has a moistening quality. So it's really needed in our body to add moistness, lubrication, youth, and plumpness to our body. And what it does to our brain is it makes us very interested in forming connections and maintaining those connections. It's a mothering hormone. It's at play when we're pregnant. It's at play when we're postpartum and breastfeeding and when we're mothering. And so we're really interested here in the external. So in your inner spring and inner summer, these are times to execute what you desire in the world, to use the energy of estrogen to maintain your bonds and relationships. For me, I am a person who has, I have to share a lot. I'm very visible and I'm a very much an introverted person. Like I'd rather just be in nature alone with my drum. And I have to do this and that's part of my challenge in this lifetime. And so I use my inner spring and inner summer as times when I'm recording, times when I'm speaking to people, times when I'm, checking in with students or clients or working with my team. And so this is a great time to go on dates, to go on meetings, to plan events that you want to share with the world, but don't necessarily feel like doing unless you have that extra energy of estrogen. This is also a great time to clean and to clean up your inner world and get aligned with new rhythms and routines, but also to clean up your external world, deep cleaning your house, organizing your space, supporting yourself so that you can execute what you desire from a place of clarity. And I always say, as we start to ovulate and we're looking ahead, because whenever we're in the current cycle, we're looking ahead to the next.
Mm.
Just like if we were working the land, you wouldn't want to start planning for winter right when winter hits.
Mhm.
You would spend all summer, all fall planning for winter. And this is the issue with most of us who have period problems is that we don't start taking care of ourselves until those period problems arise.
Mm.
But your painful period or irregular cycle isn't a manifestation or a representation of what you've done that day. It's a representation of what you've done every day before that day. And so we have to be really careful in the first two phases of our cycle to not burn ourselves out.
Mhm.
So, yes, this is a time to execute, but this is a time to execute moving at a rhythm that your body can sustain. And one of my teachers, Dr. Claudia Welch, she's a doctor of Oriental medicine and an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she says, men, in order to rest, first need to create. Women, in order to create, first need to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so, still remembering that you need ample sleep. Women need 8 to 10 hours of sleep because our adrenal glands have so much more to do with our production of hormones than our male counterparts who produce the majority of their hormones in their testes. So we need a lot of rest, even in the first 2 phases of our cycle. So making sure you're still eating regularly, you're still resting, you're still prioritizing your inner care as much as your external expression in the world in these first 2 phases. And then in the next 2 phases, what we're really looking at here is rest, rejuvenation, and building. So in the luteal phase, our inner fall, we switch from estrogen dominance to progesterone dominance. And our entire focus here is on building the lining of the endometrium. And so we need to make sure that we're taking in enough food and that we're metabolizing that food, that our body can actually use that food to help build that lining. And I gave a free download, which is my deeply nourished foods for PMS. And that's something that if you want, you can download that and get this whole list of foods and nutrients that we need. Because our inner winter is really the representation of what we've done the weeks before. And if we think about the energy of fall, fall is when the wind starts to change. It's when you pull a blanket over you. You know, you take note of everything that's happened in the year before and the seasons before. So this is a time to prioritize your inner relationship with yourself. Start preparing for the ceremony. I know a lot of people here sit with master teachers and plants, and before you do that, you prepare your body for the ceremony so that you can sit with clarity and peace, and so that it's easier for you to connect with that medicine. And if your inner winter is the ceremony, then your inner fall is the preparation. How do you need to eat? How do you need to sleep? How do you need to be honest with yourself and what you need, so that you can cut away that which your mind told you you thought you should be doing and should get done, and actually be real with yourself of what can you actually get done before you start to bleed. So this is really the time when we start to press the brakes and slow down, and the progesterone dominance helps us to do that. From a Chinese medicine perspective, what's happening during the luteal phase is that all the blood needs to go through our liver first. The liver is known as the woman's organ. That's how important it is in our cycle. And the liver, if it's deficient, if it doesn't have enough energy, it holds the emotion of anger and frustration. And so a lot of us are deeply depleted. And then as our depleted blood goes through our liver, we feel the depletion of that organ. And what arises from that place is anger and frustration. So oftentimes when you're premenstrual and you feel the anger, you feel the frustration coming up, what's underneath that is a deep depletion that needs to be tended to. And so honoring all of the emotions in the premenstrual phase as the messengers, and knowing that in order to hear them, we need to slow down. If you're on a call with your best friend and they're sharing a really difficult story with you, you probably wouldn't be trying to clean your house, take care of the kids, get work done at the same time. Our wombs are our best friends. They pull us aside and whisper in our ears what's going on. But just like we would need to presence ourselves to a human best friend to really receive what they're hearing, we need to slow down. So the luteal phase is the time to start slowing down. And then once we've prepared for that ceremony, we move into inner winter. And I love how you shared how in your lineage, each day has a different meaning. Each day has a different intention. And we have to consider that the release of our blood is a death. It is a grieving period. Everything that has not come to fruition is being released. Everything that we have experienced is also being released. Every month, we are gifted with a new body. It is a death and a rebirth because endings are also beginnings. So, in the first few days, when most of us experience heavier bleeds, how can you clear your schedule as much as possible to rest? And for those listening, I know you and I are both mothers and business owners, and it's like, how can we do that? Right. And when I say that, I often meet resistance of like, there's no way I can do that. My schedule does not allow for that. And I really welcome that reality of knowing that so many of us are so busy. And yet, if you do not prioritize your rest, who the hell is going to? We have power, and it is up to us to wield that power to find 5 to 10 minutes where we can close our eyes and connect with ourselves. And so many of the health issues that we experience are because we're so focused on the external, the doing, which we've regarded as solar energy, and not tending to our inner hearth, our inner relationships enough. So the inner winter is the time to do that. It is the time to realign and come back into right relationship. You've had a hard month. That's okay. Now you are reborn and you're about to look ahead to inner spring because the cycle starts all over again. So, living in this way can be really challenging. It's only challenging because we live in a world that really does not move at the rhythm of the body. And so the challenge is worth it
Mm.
because the challenge is the way that we return home. By meeting that challenge, it's the return back to ourselves.
Mhm. And once we start to meet that challenge, we realize that we can't live any other way. Once we start to really embody this, it becomes very natural and it becomes just part of our routine to the point where it's just automatic that we plan around that. And so I think that's also an important element of it. It's like the orienting to this way of thinking and this way of consciousness at first can be jarring, but then once we start to really open our homes and our hearts to this way, it feels so good and so deeply nourishing and brings so much into balance that we had been struggling for years sometimes to find how to force it into balance when it really just required this softening and resting into it. But thank you so much, Usha. It's so beautiful to hear you share and really just go on the journey of the seasons and really attune to the medicine of each season and chapter. And I think a really beautiful area that we can touch on, I know we're kind of nearing our time, is what that can look like on a grounded level with our partners and with our responsibilities and how we talk about it with our children. And, you mentioned like what it means as far as your planning of your engagements, but I'd also really love to hear you have a mostly women team on Women Wellness. So, what are some of the things that you all support one another doing on a business side, as far as the company culture? I'm very curious about that. And anything else you feel called to share, because also I think any man or non-bleeding partner who might be tuning into this, a common question that we probably both get asked is like, well, how do I support my partner in this? This seems like something that they need to do. And like, what's my role in this? So I would love to kind of spend a little bit of time talking about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think that the thing to remember is that it does start with us. And that when we first come to cyclical living and aligning our lives with our menstrual cycles, I've shared this on so many different podcasts. And sometimes the the hosts are quite overwhelmed by it. They're like, oh my gosh, I need a printout sheet, that tells me everything because this is so overwhelming. And I really welcome that, if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I have to do now. And yet, if you really tune in, you'll see that this way of living is likely what your body's been asking for this whole time. It's like that undercurrent, that yearning, that whispering that your body was telling you in your ear that you were like, no, 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 you're crazy. I got to do it this way. This is the way to success. And, you know, I had an awakening when I became a mother because I had a really hard birth and I'm the breadwinner in my family. And so I really hustled my whole pregnancy. And it wasn't what I wanted, but it was what it was. And so I remember my daughter was 6 months old and I put her in the back seat. She was in her car seat and she magically fell asleep, which never happens. And, being the busy mother entrepreneur that I am, I put on a marketing podcast and I was like, great, I'm going to get shit done while my child sleeps. And I'm listening to these different women. As I'm going through the podcast, I notice like what they're saying just made my whole body tense up. And so I put on a different one, a different woman. These are all highly successful, sought after women. And I realized after listening to all the podcasts, which I didn't resonate with a single one, I realized that none of these women had children. None of these women lived in alignment with their bodies. All of them had some kind of chronic illness at some point related to their womb. And yet here they were being pedestaled as kind of the pinnacle of success. And I realized, and I made this commitment to myself that I would not reach success. I would not deny my body and push myself to chronic illness for some definition of success that someone told me I need in order to be worthy.
Mhm.
And that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it my way. And so what that looks like, from my perspective, running a team and being supported by a team is that we're all extremely communicative with where we are in our cycles. If one of us is premenstrual, if one of us is bleeding, we might get another person to cover us. For me, I batch all my work according to my cycle. So I am very creative when I'm in my follicular and ovulatory phases. I will have these huge waves of energy and I try to get the most I can done. And then when I'm premenstrual, especially the few days before my period, I mean, I feel like I can barely speak English sometimes. And yet, leaning into that energy, I've actually started to do more recording and do more teaching when I'm premenstrual because that channel of
Mhm.
rawness and truth in me is very strong. And I'm trying to form a deeper relationship with that and welcome being seen in that. What it looks like on a partner level, because this is a question I get all the time. I'm starting to live according to my cycle, but how can my partner support me? Knowing what you need is the most powerful medicine. How can you know how you're supposed to be supported if you don't know how you need to be supported? So it always starts with getting comfortable with our own cycle, knowing our own needs, and then building the awareness of our partners so that they know, oh, they don't have the same hormonal cycle as me. I feel pretty much the same every day. Not my partner. My partner does not have that experience. They are cyclical. And so, what I used to do is I would have a calendar out in the kitchen and I would mark off this is when I'm in inner spring. This is when I'm in inner summer. This is when I'm inner fall. This is inner winter. And then going through that at the beginning of the cycle with my partner. Okay, I'm an inner spring. That means I need this kind of food. That means I'm going to be focused on this. This might be my energy versus, okay, I'm starting my bleed. This is how I need to be supported. This is the kind of food I need to eat. This is where my energy is going to be focused on at this time. And what that does is it creates this beautiful line of communication so that the other partner doesn't take it personally. I have this running joke with my friends that women and men shouldn't live together when women are premenstrual. I mean, really, we're just supposed to be in the red tent together,
Mm-hmm.
brushing each other's hair, singing songs. And so when we need that time to ourselves, if we have it on the calendar in our kitchen, that's when our partners can know, oh, this is just their cycle. This is their hormones. It's not something I need to take personally. And even more so, I can support them by bringing them nourishing foods, by giving them more space, by, taking them out into nature to connect, by giving them more rest from physical activities, by supporting with chores around the house. So, really having it out in the open is such a powerful unshaming technique so that it's not hidden away, so that it's not something that just the woman has to carry, so that this cycle is seen in the home and is something that the partner, that the children know about too. And, on the level of the children, the greatest legacy that I feel I can leave as a mother is the legacy of being comfortable with my own body. And you can think right now, if you're listening, whether or not you ever saw your mother or your caregiver bleeding. The whole time I was at home, my mother menstruated. Never once did I see her rest on her period. Never once did I even see her pull a pad or a tampon out. So for me, I show my blood to my daughter every month. I talk about my blood with my daughter. I tell her that I need to eat special food on my bleed, that I need to rest. And what I'm doing there is just normalizing a natural cycle so that she inherits that legacy. So the greatest gift we can give to children is to unshame the cycle, to normalize it, to make it a part of the rhythm of the home. Just like refilling our water, just like getting more nourishment or herbs or food, the menstrual cycle is the timekeeper, the rhythm keeper for the home. And so it should be out in the open. And it's something that children are so curious about.
Mhm. My
Seeing
3-year-old
parents.
son, he's always like, "Are you on your moon, mom? Are you on your moon?" Like,
Exactly.
"No, I'm not on my moon." They are genuinely very curious and very intrigued by the magic of it.
Yes. And it's like that curiosity is something we can play on, And so many of my male partners in my life have said that they're so interested in the cycle, but they've been with women who were so ashamed of it that they never talked about it. And so really recognizing our power as women, once we accept ourselves, that creates space for others to accept us. And if they don't, well, that's their problem because we accept ourselves. And so it really starts with us opening our hearts to our bodies, opening our hearts to the cycles. And because we are so powerful, once we do that, the whole dynamic often changes.
Mm. Mhm. Thank you so much, and so, so beautiful to get to have this conversation and share it with our community because I do feel so much importance behind this education. And I really do want to also just thank you for the work that you're doing in the world and the beautiful platform that you've created and the service that you are giving to so many women and their families and to our culture as a whole. And watching you grow your platform over the last 8 or so years has been, like, such a beautiful thing because I've watched from afar, but I've really seen the dedication and service that you have poured into, your community, and we became mothers around very similar times and also went through separation with the father of our children, so there's a lot of alignment with our life journeys, and I really just want to send a prayer of beautiful blessings for your community and the work that you do, and honor you and your life path and your service and your commitment to our world and to the next generation, for our daughters and our sons to inherit a world that looks and feels so much different than the one we came into. And I really just celebrate this sacred education and wisdom that you have made it your life work to bring more to the forefront. And it's been really beautiful because over the last decade, there has been a tremendous amount of consciousness towards womb wisdom. And your platform has played a tremendous role in that, you know. And of course, nowadays there's womb experts popping up left and right, but your platform was one of the first ones that really established and spearheaded this bringing to the surface and talking about so many taboo subjects and making it okay and giving avenues and channels for women to study and take their power back as far as their bodily intuition and womb wisdom. So really just honor you, Usha, and thank you so much for the work that you do. And before we close, I would love to just give you a space to talk a little bit about Women Wellness, your beautiful women offerings.
Thank you so much, Mariah. And it's been so special. Every conversation we drop into a different rhythm, and this has just been so special to be here with you. I feel like I've gotten to touch on layers that I can't always bring in, and so I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for the invitation to come here. Um, yeah, so my work at Women Wellness really is on two different aspects. First, supporting women in understanding their bodies and reclaiming their sovereignty and understanding what they need in order to heal their own wounds. And then also training facilitators to share this work in the world, because every single person who connects with their own womb becomes like a lighthouse for others, to torchbearer, to use the light of their own inner fire to guide the way for others. So at Women Wellness, we have courses like Womb Sciences, which is a 6-week course that will take you into the anatomy, the energetics, the ancestral healing parts that you need to do in order to connect with your own womb. Or I don't like to say need, that you can do, that it's fun to do, enriching to do, to get to know your own womb, your own lineage of story in your body. And then, if you desire to share this work in the world, to go into a deep training process with me, we also have our Womb Circle Facilitator training, which is opening its doors this spring. So there's two different avenues to heal your own womb or to support other people in doing the same. And really, my work is focusing on alchemizing the science and the sacred. So keeping the practical and the esoteric, realizing that in order to express the esoteric, the spiritual in the world, we need it to be practical. We need it to be grounded, because we're real humans living in this real world, and we need wisdom that is applicable to our daily lives, especially as mothers, as business owners, all the different hats we carry.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, I highly encourage our listeners, if you are feeling called to deepen in some of the themes that we have been touching on in our conversation today, that you check out Usha's beautiful platform, Women Wellness. We'll include all the links in our show notes. And it's really an incredible environment to be able to be held in a container that's going to be nourishing and supportive for your spiritual journey and your personal studies and investigations on this beautiful path. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening and being part of this conversation and being open to bringing this important topic into the conversation and how it relates to walking the plant path, because it is very important and complementary to all the work that we do. And thank you again, Usha, for your time, for your heart, and showing up with us in this beautiful way. It's been an honor and a blessing to have this space together, and wish you well on your journey.
Thank you so much, Mariah, and thank you to everyone who listened. It's truly an honor.
On behalf of the Four Visions family, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and have gained seeds of wisdom that will nourish your spiritual path. If you have a moment, please leave us a review, as this helps us to reach more people. For more resources and information about the plant path, and for the highest quality spiritual tools and botanicals, please visit us at fourvisions.com. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you all. Until next time.